For this deep dive, we're switching gears a bit. Trading our scuba gear, I guess, for some noise-canceling headphones.
Noise canceling might not be a bad idea for this one. We are diving into the world of political messaging after all. Specifically, the music of it.
Right, and I gotta say, the research paper you sent, Musical Persuasion in Donald Trump's Campaign Advertising, really caught my eye. I mean, we all know music can be powerful, but to sway voters.
It's amazing, isn't it, how music can influence us without us even realizing it? It's subtle, but it's there, especially in something as meticulously crafted as a political campaign.
Yeah, no kidding. And this paper, it doesn't mess around. It jumps right into the deep end, focusing on these things called contrast ads.
Exactly. Contrast ads. These are those political ads that try to do two things at once, lift up their candidate while simultaneously taking a swipe at the opponent.
Okay, so it's like a 1-2 punch of positive and negative messaging, right?
Right.
All in the span of what, like 60 seconds or less, and all set to music.
You got it. Less than a minute to persuade you. And the music, well, it's doing a lot more than just fill in the silence.
Okay, I'm already hooked, but I gotta ask, why focus on Trump's ads specifically?
Well, a few reasons. First, they're a prime example of how modern campaigns use music deliberately. Second, they often use lesser-known production music, so not like famous pop songs. This gives us a cleaner slate to analyze the techniques themselves.
Right, no pre-existing baggage.
Exactly. And, well, of course, there's the Trump factor. His campaign style was so unconventional, it really makes for a captivating case study.
It's true. That campaign definitely had its own, let's say, unique soundtrack. But let's get into the nitty-gritty. When we talk about the music itself, what exactly are we looking for? Give us the cheat sheet.
Well, the research delves into things like harmonic progressions, basically the sequence of chords that create feelings of tension, resolution, excitement, all that good stuff.
Okay, so it's like the music's way of setting the mood, right? Like ominous music equals bad, uplifting music equals good.
You got it. And then you have cadences. Think of those as musical punctuation, specific chord progressions that give a sense of finality or, conversely, create anticipation.
Ooh, okay, so like a musical cliffhanger. Now you're speaking my language.
Exactly. And of course, we can't forget orchestration. That's about the choice of instruments and their volume, a single flute versus, say, a wall of trumpets. All of it drastically impacts how the music hits you. And believe it or not, silence is huge too. A well-placed pause can carry as much weight as any melody.
Okay, so we're talking about these musical cues that are working on us, often without us even realizing it. So what happens when we turn up the volume on Trump's ads? What did this researcher find? So we're talking about using music to like subtly influence people, right? What exactly did they find when they looked at Trump's ads?
One of the most interesting things is this idea of, he calls it orchestral hollowing out. It's wild, actually. Picture this. You're watching one of these contrast ads, and when it's bashing the opponent, the music gets really thin, almost empty sounding.
Wow, so like musically implying the opponent is inadequate or empty?
Yeah, exactly. And this is where it gets effective. When the ad switches to praising Trump, the music swells up. More instruments, fuller sound. The whole thing just feels bigger.
So they're literally making Trump's message sound more powerful than the opponent's just with the music.
Wow. It's kind of insidious when you think about it. Right. Like you might not even notice it consciously, but it's working on you.
It's making me very aware of what I'm listening to, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Did they find any other tricks of the trade? Any other patterns?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Remember we were talking about different instruments and their vibes? Well, it turns out Trump's ads use a lot of brass instruments, trumpets, trombones, especially for those pro-Trump moments.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, brass instruments, they've got that powerful, majestic kind of feel. Like you wouldn't use a flute for a victory march, right? You'd use a trumpet.
Exactly. It's all about those deep-seated associations we have with certain instruments. Brass instruments often signal triumph, confidence, think fanfares, victory marches. So pair that with visuals of Trump and his message, and it's subtly telling the listener, this is a winner, without ever saying it.
It's like a musical endorsement.
This is fascinating. Okay, but you mentioned earlier that these ads also got into really specific chord structures, like down to the nitty-gritty music theory.
Oh, yeah. It gets even more granular than that. One thing the researcher found was that they often use this specific chord progression called a plagal cadence to really drive home their points.
Okay, now I'm going to be honest with you. Music theory isn't exactly my forte, but hit me with it. It sounds way more complicated than it is. Basically, it's a really common chord progression that creates a very strong feeling of resolution, of coming home. It's super common in, like, hymns and anthems.
Oh, interesting. So it's tapping into that feeling of like tradition and trust even.
Exactly. It plays on that deep-seated desire for certainty, for closure, and by using it alongside a message, it makes that message feel more true, even if we're not consciously aware of it.
Wow, it's like they're borrowing that feeling of authority from traditional music. So sneaky. Okay, what else? What other sonic tricks do they have up their sleeves?
Well, believe it or not, one of the most powerful tools they use is actually silence.
Really? Silence, like just not having any music playing.
Yep. It seems counterintuitive, but those well-placed pauses can be just as impactful as any catchy melody.
Okay, I'm curious, how does that work?
Think about it. When you hear a sudden silence, it grabs your attention. Right? Like it creates a sense of anticipation for what's coming next. Or it can be used to emphasize a particular word or image, making it stand out. It's like a musical spotlight.
Wow. That is wild. So you've got the sparse orchestration when the opponent is on screen, then the big brass-heavy sound for Trump, these specific chords that evoke a sense of certainty, and even just using silence at the right moment. I had no idea so much thought went into this stuff. It's like we've been watching a magic show, but instead of pulling a rabbit out of a hat, they're using music to mess with our minds. But okay, let's take a step back for a second. Why does any of this even matter to the average person? Beyond these campaigns, beyond Trump, are we being bombarded with these musical mind games all the time?
Oh, absolutely. And that's the real point here, I think. The thing is, while this research focused on Trump's ads, these techniques, they aren't unique to him or even to politics.
They're everywhere, aren't they?
Everywhere, commercials, movies, even just walking through the grocery store, it's all carefully crafted to make you feel a certain way.
Okay, so it's like once you see it, you can't unsee it, right? Like, I'm never going to hear a commercial the same way again.
That's a good thing. It's not about being cynical. It's about being aware. The more you understand how music can be used to play in your emotions, the more you can engage with it critically.
So, like, next time I hear a super dramatic piano chord while browsing online shoe sales, I should maybe take a deep breath before I hit confirm purchase.
Exactly. In all seriousness, what I find really fascinating about this research is it opens up so many more questions. Like, do different musical styles work better on different groups of people? What about cultural differences? Do those change how we react to these cues? There's so much more to discover.
It really makes you realize that music is this universal language. And like any language, it can be used for good or, well, not so good.
Precisely. And in our world today, where we're constantly being bombarded with information and media, being aware of those subtle influences, it's more important now than ever.
Couldn't agree more. So, to everyone listening, next time a song really gets stuck in your head, maybe, just maybe, ask yourself, is it just a catchy tune or is there something more going on? Keep those ears open and stay savvy out there. You never know what hidden messages are waiting to be decoded.